Hi, Misha here, and just before Thanksgiving I had 3 Eaglemoss models come in. I'm doing 3 videos on them, and all of these I've really been looking forward to, so it was a nice little surprise. Have the Tellurian Batris from Next Generation, have the second prototype, or whatever you like to consider it, Excelsior. I guess you could call it from the movies. And really, funnily enough, the one I've been looking forward to the most, the presumably U.S.S. Sarajevo from the 4th season of Enterprise. I believe it appeared in 2 or 3 episodes. And for comparison scale, I brought out not a new ship, the NX-01, which was a very early issue in our collection. This is issue 160 from Eaglemoss's official Starships collection. These are considered die-cast models or miniatures. And this one especially has some pretty good weight to it. It's not all metal. They do use plastic for detailing, which, to be fair, every die-cast maker does. But they use metal for structure and weight. The collection was ending. Of course, it was originally supposed to be, 75, 80 issues, and then it's been extended out 10, 20 times since then. At one time it was supposed to end at 160, and the Sarajevo was on the to be announced but upcoming list for a long time. And they were getting up, announcing what would be issue 158 and 159, which are the Batris and the concept number 2 Excelsior. So I'm looking at the 150s. Okay, I see the Grumall, awesome. See the Klingon Rebel transport, another cool one. Then I see 2 prototype Excelsiors, and yes, well, I think they're cool. I'm like, where's my Sarajevo? As I've said in a few comments on YouTube and elsewhere, if they at least added this to the collection, I would be content. So when it was finally announced that this would be number 160 in the collection, I literally and verbally cheered. Yeah, my wife asked what was wrong. I said, no, I've just been wanting this one. I don't know why. I've always kind of had I don't know, it's just an interest. I hear people describing the model, and it sounded interesting and different. Say what you will about Enterprise, it had some really neat starships, but getting miniatures of them was pretty much impossible for everything except for the NX-01 until this collection. In fact, it was because they did the Warp Delta and the Intrepid that I decided to waste my money on all these Eaglemoss models. It was when the Intrepid came out that I decided to jump in, because that's when they started really doing different, unique models. The first 24 issues or so were pretty standard. They were neat, but they were ships that most everyone else had done. Once they started getting into issues 30 and 40, though, then it got interesting. And they still do some common ships, but yeah, they also do ships like this that were very clearly on scene and very clearly part of the fleet, but just never made. And of course, in the studio, these were always just CGI miniatures too, software. So this is, if not the literal first time this has been made into a model, it's definitely one of the first. But what is the Sarajevo? We don't know a whole lot about this ship. It had a registry of NC-27, and as some have pointed out, By the logic of Enterprise, this would make it part of the NC class, which is very possible. It seems to be more advanced than the so-called Warp Delta, but perhaps not as advanced as the Intrepid type, and certainly not as much as the NX type. It's classified as a transport, although many have likened it to a yacht, which I completely understand. It does have that kind of appearance. It's capable of Warp 3, so not slow, not fast. Faster than a regular cargo ship, but slower than more cutting-edge ships like the Intrepid or Enterprise. It's presumably armed with phase cannons, although it could have the older plasma cannons. We don't know if it has torpedoes. Probably it doesn't have photonic torpedoes. If it does, it's probably the older spatial torpedoes. But this seems to be a transport. It's also been described as an elite observation craft, meaning perhaps it has some scout or scientific study duties, which would make sense. A lot of modern ships today can do both. It is first seen in the episode Homefront, where it welcomes Enterprise back. And then it's more prominent in the episode Daedalus, where it takes the inventor of the transporter and his daughter back home. From that, we know it has warp drive. And plus, it has, nacelles. Now, it's interesting. These are kind of compact nacelles, very Defiant-esque. And some people have said this can't be a Federation ship. It's got to be an alien design. Why? I think it looks very Federation. Just use your imagination. Take the Warp Delta. It still has it's kind of a blended hull. Not quite a saucer section, but it's not as pointed as the Warp Deltas. Seems like a good interim step. And then if you take the wings or struts from the Warp Delta and remove them and bring the engines in, yeah, I think it's just a more compact, more refined version. Possibly, instead of testing faster engines, it was, going for more compact, streamlined engines. It also looks like it could be maybe atmospheric capable. Don't know, but it's much more streamlined. It looks very aerodynamic for a starship from Star Trek. So maybe it had, and that would kind of lend to the observation role. If it were dipping into gas giants or high atmospheres. Maybe it was even capable of landing. I don't know. Then again, in Enterprise, we're really kind of before force fields and that kind of structural reinforcement, so landing would be pretty difficult. As far as size, and this is the main reason I brought the good old Enterprise NX out, which, by the way, I actually like this design. The Enterprise here is about 225 meters, and the Sarajevo is, roughly speaking, 200 meters. And so the scaling is pretty close from Eaglemoss. The Sarajevo might be a tad larger scale, but the Enterprise model is longer, although just, than the Sarajevo. Meaning that if they're off scale, it's not by much, and I like that. That's pretty neat. Now, I really wanted to point this out. You can see the much larger warp engines on the Enterprise, meaning it's, kind of showing its roles in Explorer and all that. But also look at how thin the saucer is. We know that it has 7 decks total. Now look at the Sarajevo. Smaller engines, so they're slower, but look how much thicker it is. Even the main hull, not to even count the secondary. Therefore, it has to have more room inside. I know more might be taken up by the engines being inside back here, but even then, if say this whole back is engines and shuttle bays and stuff, the front still would have more space for decks, crew quarters, observation lounges, cargo bays, scientific bays. I would honestly say, based on how thick it is, it could have 12 or more decks. Meaning, though it's slower than the Enterprise, perhaps it can carry a lot more. We know the Enterprise has a standard crew of just over 80, but we know it can carry more comfortably because of the Makos in Season 3. So let's just say, for shits and giggles, the Enterprise can maintain a crew of at least 100 indefinitely, meaning the Sarajevo could carry at least 50% more, plus more equipment, more stores. Keep in mind this is kind of before replicators, and this probably didn't have transporters, so you would need more shuttlecraft. I don't know. I am just musing. Also seems like one of those craft that could be easily used to service Earth's colonies, since it was faster than a standard cargo ship. Just have a bit of a colony ship vibe, and that would kind of also explain the transport abilities. I love just the kind of the workaday ships in the fleet. This doesn't seem to be a combat craft. It has other duties. But we know that the cargo ships like Horizon and Fortunate had armament, so it's extremely safe to assume this had some kind of defensive armament as well. But yeah, it's just one of those CGI models made for Season 4 of Enterprise. The designer said he was inspired by horseshoes, which makes sense. It is kind of nice to see a different Federation look. Why not? Sets it apart. As for the model itself, it is large. This is plastic polymer. Boop. Hit the Enterprise. This is all metal, and it actually does have plastic inserts for the nacelles, which is nice. For you, anyway. I can't see them, but I can feel them. This one's a little loose, but it's in there. I might probably leave it alone. This one's tight. So yeah, I'm super happy they ended up actually doing this one. And I'm also happy that it's a good model. It's not tiny. They could have made this one pretty small. They didn't. It's got a lot of detail for what it is. They did it justice, and it will really fit into the Enterprise fleet. They've done good jobs on the Enterprise ships. I like all of them. The Intrepid, the Warp Delta, the Moon Shuttle, or whatever you'd like to call it, the one with the rocket engines. They're all neat. I'll do a video with them all displayed out eventually, I'm sure. But yeah, just had to share this. If you can't tell, I'm pretty excited about it. It'll go well in my collection. The U.S.S, presumably, Sarajevo, presumably of the NC class. Transport, space yacht, observation craft, what have you. If you have any questions or comments, please do leave them below. If you could, like, share, and subscribe, and check out some of my other videos. This is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon. Next time.